as relatively you can be.
Okay, so try to explain to us what just happened.
They're switching batteries.
Oh, they're switching batteries.
Just so you,
Yeah.
for those of you who
Can you
just,
see us now?
we're not yet, Martin. Now we got you back. Just for viewers who are joining at this hour,
Okay.
Martin Savage is reporting live with Marine unit. They came under some RPG fire, a rocket-propelled grenade. Did not hit any of the Marines. It hit a building they were passing by. They have been exploding a T-55 tank, at least one, as far as I can tell. And we are staying with Martin live.
What do you need?
Martin, are you back with us? Can you hear us?
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you. We're just sort of repositioning ourselves, so in case we have to move in a hurry, we're prepared to do so. So again, the explosions you were hearing there sounded like 50 cal or the heavy machine gun ammunition that's still cooking off inside that tank. They're obviously, in situations like this, the tanks are fairly dangerous, which is why you want to keep your distance. But when it is all said and done, and it's going to be hours from now, that tank obviously will be no good to anyone, and that's the main purpose here.
You were talking before about the Iraqis surrounding those tanks. Some of them were in jogging suits, and you had mentioned that the military believed they were paid to stay there as decoys. Can you tell us more from that angle of the story?
Well, we're not quite clear. I mean, that's really just the assessment of one Marine who was out there. I suppose, as it suggests, that this would be a slowing down device, that in other words, it would keep the Marines focused on the armor they see, the armor that is obviously in place. They spent a lot of rounds of ammunition on it today. They had air cover coming in. I'm not sure what is going on around the corner there. We have another photographer down there. It's clear that there is a lot of fire coming from that region. But back to the ETOWs, it was just the thought that perhaps these people were left behind, the tanks left behind as sort of decoys to keep the Marines busy while other military units got out of town.
And Martin, the ETOW that you just referred to, that's the TOW missile. That's the a missile used to destroy generally armored vehicles, enemy tanks, things like that, correct?
Right, yeah, the TOW is a very effective weapon. It has a very strong warhead on it that can punch through armor, and they've been using it quite a bit. All right, now they're coming back around the corner. The Mark 19, which is the other tan Humvee that you see there, is automatic grenade launcher. I believe it fires 40 millimeter explosive rounds. That's a highly effective weapon as well, not so much against armor, but certainly against personnel. The TOW has been active this morning. There have been a number of cat shots or TOW shots that they've been taking. And of course, they use it sometimes against armor or sometimes against fortified positions. We've seen both in the last 10 minutes, I suppose.
Now, Martin, I'm assuming we're seeing your other cameraman there taking a shot down the road a little bit. Describe for us, if you can, what it's like for the Marines, for yourself even, what it's like being in this situation where you're not exactly sure what is going on, and there are explosions going around, and I imagine the adrenaline is pumping quite fast right now through you. Take us there. Tell us what it's like.
Well, it was funny this morning when we woke up. We woke up to an artillery barrage. You hear fighting around you all the time, but much of it can be at a distance of several kilometers. As a journalist, you're sort of frustrated because you want to be up there where it is, but you also know that the battlefield's a very confusing place, and it isn't as simple as hopping in the car, getting on I-90 and driving out there. It would be highly hazardous to roll up on a situation if Marines didn't know you were in the area. You yourself could become targeted. So if Scott McQuinney, my cameraman, who I've been with for some time, was lamenting, he said, "Aren't we ever going to see any action?" And then we were told they were going to start blowing up some of these tanks. And Scotty said, "Well, let's go check this out." So we thought it was going to be a simple demolition project. We're in a small convoy of Humvees with our own CNN Humvee, and then whiz, right past us was the RPG, the shattering of glass, and that's when the adrenaline dump kicked. And you're trying to figure out, all right, who is fired, where are they fired from, and for goodness sakes, are they going to fire again? And that's when you saw the Marines immediately draw their weapons, get down into hunker positions behind their vehicles, and then immediately try to assess the situation. You had the commander get on the radio and instantly called for tow vehicles to get up here because you want to have something with a lot of firepower in addition to the standard machine guns and automatic grenade launchers. And that's what they've done. I mean, technically, they've done a very good job here. It may look, from our untrained vantage point, as being chaotic or perhaps dangerous, but you can tell the way they've got this street on both ends covered, the way they've continued to focus on demolishing these tanks while still facing a potential threat, but they know their job and they do it well.
Martin, they do look pretty calm. Carol Costello again. You can see the thick smoke coming out after they've hit those tanks. Is that coming your way? What does it smell like? Is it clouding the air?
We're going to back up a bit because we think another tank is going to go soon. So just bear with us. We'll try to stay with you.
Keep going on. Go quite quickly, mate. Let me ram them.
Okay, wait. Let me get out now. Make sure the back is clear. We can't see out the back of our vehicle, so while we're reversing, we don't want to hit another military vehicle. Keep coming, Gerard. Keep coming. You're okay. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. They're going to move forward. Sorry that you have to listen to our directions here as we do this, but
Martin,
No
we're
problem
hanging.
at all.
we need a team effort.
We're hanging
And
with
the
you.
engineer actually driving.
Martin, believe me, we are hanging with you at every word you say. It may not be interesting to you, but it is unbelievable to watch.
Okay. So yeah, we sort of all play multiple roles here. Actually, my production assistant is running the camera right now. Gerard, the engineer who normally takes care of the technical stuff, is driving the vehicle. And Scott McQuinney, who is the other photographer, is out rolling tape. Let's see if we can get a read on what exactly is going to happen here, but it looks like they might be getting ready to...
Hey,
yeah, you know, if that tank's going to blow, I don't think we want to be quite this close.
Oh, yes. Please back
Yeah.
away if you must.
Come on back, as the saying goes. What's going on, Scotty?
They blew up tanks. Blew up some tanks and then shot the engine blocks with 50 cal out to military personnel base.
Okay. So Scotty was just telling me he was up forward with the other camera, but they blew up 2 tanks there and then opened fire with the 50 cal machine guns, which is what we heard going through the engine blocks of some personnel carriers. Again, all of this to deny access to anyone to use it should they come across it later.
What came through down the alleyway was an RPG fired from the civilian.
Okay, so now Scotty says that the RPG that came at us was actually fired from inside the village. Oh. Well, there you go. It's getting hot. Let's go.
Just
That looks like the armored personnel carrier. We're going to keep moving back because these also have ammunition inside of them. There goes your tank down the end. And the secondary explosions that are about to follow. You're all right, Gerard. Keep coming back. Let's pull back. So the concern, obviously, that RPG is it came from the village, and now who fired it? And do they have another one, obviously? Which is why we're not going to linger too much longer. But there are more tanks to go, so if you miss that one, there'll be another one soon enough.
Martin, are the Marines
Secondary explosions here.
are the Marines now going through the town too, Martin?
Okay, we're losing our support. Let's get out of here. Smudge, you got to get in now because we're moving. Hurry up. It's going to blow, and we're right by it.
Who's going to blow?
That tank. You're all right. Back it up.
We go down there, Will?
Yeah, go down where they were. Let's get out of here.
Scotty!
Don't wait for him to go. He'll run behind us.
Where do we go?
Just go around that corner or straight ahead.
Yeah, okay. Take a stride, get running.
Go, go, go.
Go over an angle, mate. You'll be all right.
Follow them.
Scott, you got time to get in?
Okay, we're going to try and get Scotty back in the vehicle.
Video phone. What's the video phone? Why is the standby gone out, mate?
Can you still see us, Atlanta? Are you still with us?
We still have you, Martin. We are watching and listening.
Okay. All right, hold on, we're still live, so let's control the language.
Don't worry about the language, Martin. Just keep rolling.
And just keep safe.
So obviously what we're doing now is we're withdrawing from here. They've set the charges, so they've done enough. And I think they're obviously concerned too about the fire they took from the village. So the safest thing at this point is to withdraw and assess the situation and figure out how to move from there. Certainly this was not the sort of routine demolition that they thought it was going to be about half an hour ago when we made our way in.
So, Martin, are they going to return to that village? I mean, you said the RPG, the rocket-propelled grenade, came from the village. How big a concern is that for Marines, and is that just simply someone else's problem at this point?
Well, you know what, Anderson? Your guess is as good as mine right now. We'll try to find out exactly how they're going to deal with it. Right now, it's always good to stay with the folks in green, at least in this point when you're embedded with them. So that's why what they do, we will do. And we'll try to assess the situation here as to what comes next. It's clear they're keeping an eye on this village. You've got a couple of tows that are right here in place, as well as 50 cal machine guns.
If I were you, Martin, I would stick very close to those tows.
But we're just trying to assess. We want to make sure that we're not in the way of these vehicles too when they have to roll. You want to be free and clear of them because they tend to move quickly, and when they fire, you don't want to be anywhere near the backblast of that tow missile. There's just no way to tell you how loud it can be. It looks like we're going to be moving again. You're obviously seeing this as we are, and so trying to ascertain exactly what's happening.
Are you able to communicate with the Marines?
It looks like the team is going to withdraw. Well, if you mean do we have a radio and it means to talk to them over from our vehicle, no, we do not. Obviously, we talk to them. We have a great rapport with them, having lived with them now for a couple of weeks. We live as they live. We do as they do. And as a result of that, we are accepted amongst them. So, yeah, we talk quite a bit. We just haven't had a chat since this situation came down.
And of course, this kind of thing was discussed with them before. Did they, I mean, of course, they would tell you how to stay the safest, correct?
Well, they do. I mean, one of the rules or one of the deals that was made for the embed process was that we would, you can be with the military, you could be with the Marines, you're embedded. Yes, they worry about safety, but they worry about safety for their own forces. So our regard is taken no more highly or any less seriously than it would be for the average Marine. In other words, they aren't trying to shield us from anything. They don't say don't go up there because it might be dangerous, and you're in the media. We're not. No, that has not been the case. If we want to go anywhere, we make the request of commanders, and usually shortly it's fulfilled. They'll tell you, hey, watch out here on the left, you could get some fire from there, watch out on the right, and make sure you don't go here or there. But they aren't out there to protect us because we are simply civilians reporting from a battlefront. We signed on, so that means we took the danger. I think, let's see what we're coming up on here. It's also British armor that has been moving into this area. The British are doing what's called well, they're replacing the Marines. The Marines are ready to move on to other objectives. So the British have decided to come in the oil fields here to the south, in the oil facilities, and they are doing a relieve in place, it is called. So British tank is up right over here, as you can see. And this is the other area where the Iraqi tanks are. In fact, Spudge, let me open the door for you. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. There's still a lot of activity going on here. I'm trying to peer around the corner to find out what's going on. As you look in the direction where the camera is pointed, you may see the British tank. It is guarding right over a number of Iraqi tanks. Perhaps you can see there is a muzzle just sort of poking out of the ground. You'll also see some smoke that's coming from an armored vehicle that they blew up earlier today.
Should we inform him that he's on international and that does he want to do a recap?
And so that's why the British are in place over there. If you want to pan back towards the village smudge, you can see that there's a lot of smoke rising from over there where we've got a mixture of things going on actually in the distance. You have a number of oil fires. You have a number of still some ammunition going off, and then you have the tanks and vehicles that were demolished over there. So
Martin, you mentioned the oil fires. Martin, when were those oil fires set? Were they set before you got there or as the Marines arrived?
It's unclear, Carol, really. We're trying to, it was unknown. When we came in the area, they were already burning. Now, we haven't seen oil wells per se. What we've usually seen are oil pipelines that have been burning. This whole southern area of Iraq is crisscrossed with oil transmission pipelines. And it appears that somehow they were damaged, whether intentionally or in the initial battle here of artillery and aerial bombardment to clear the way for the ground troops to come in. They were struck. As a result, they caught on fire, and that's why they're burning. It's nothing like the, say, 700 wells that were burning in Kuwait after the end of the original Gulf War. It's only plumes of smoke here and there on the horizon. The Marines obviously are outfitted to deal with those. Their job is to secure the perimeter of the oil facility because they're more worried about that facility going up. Someone would sabotage more so than they are about these spot fires. Eventually, experts will be brought in, and perhaps even the local oil workers. There are a lot of Iraqi oil workers here, and once they've been cleared, they'll go back to their job because it's their oil, and the Marines and the military want to make sure it goes to the Iraqi people. You can see more explosions going off over here. More white smoke. Okay, and now Gerard's telling us we're getting ready to move, which of course means so are we.
Martin, just so you know, we were being joined by our CNN International, our international viewers, and whenever you get a moment, you might want to just recap a little bit about what has happened in the last 30 minutes or so with you, but when at your leisure.
Okay. Well, to recap for you, we are near the area of Basra, outside of a major oil facility, Iraqi oil facility, where the Marines grabbed that objective yesterday. It was considered to be a primary goal because securing the oil wealth of this nation for the Iraqi people is number one with them.
Get the head of the Marines. We're going to sit ahead.
And as a result of that, they began pushing out. And as they were pushing out, they came across Iraqi armor. They engaged that this morning and then found other pieces to be abandoned, tanks, APCs, that sort of thing. We were on a routine demolition mission going into a small village where these tanks were posted nearby when suddenly we were fired upon with an RPG, and that's what sort of began this operation here of trying to maintain force security. The RPG came from within the village and continue the job of demolition because these Marines aren't a sort of fighting force that stays in place long. They've got other places to go, and they have a mission to fulfill, so just because they get shot, it doesn't take them off their timeline. And that's brought us to where we are. You can see that the concern is still out in the area looking forward here from these Hummers. This is another wide open area that is filled with earthen berms, filled with all sorts of trenches, and an area where they had received fire from earlier today. In fact, the first Hummers that came down here this morning said they turned in, saw the tanks, and nearly had a heart attack, opened fire quickly with their 50 cal machine guns, and then withdrew to fire tows and took out the tanks. So it's very much a fluid battlefield here. You don't necessarily have huge, massive battles that take place. You have sporadic altercations isn't really a good word, but you have sporadic fighting. And if you're in the middle of that sporadic fighting, of course, at that time, it seems pretty severe. In the overall theater, though, it has been relatively calm, and it's usually only in the distance that you hear the fighting. So it just happened to be that we came across one of those sporadic incidents.
Tell us again about the Iraqi troops or alleged Iraqi troops around those empty tanks, Martin.
Well, it was a situation where when they discovered the tanks, they didn't find anybody in them, but they did see a group of about 13 men, somewhat in the distance, maybe about 200 yards away, not dressed in Iraqi uniform. The men had their, this is how it was described to me, I was not there, but the Marines say that the men had their arms in the air as if they were, ready to capitulate, to surrender, and somewhere, somebody then opened fire on the Hummers that had come to accept that surrender. Well, you can imagine the chaos that caused. They opened fire with their 50 cal machine guns on the tanks, and then withdrew and fired on the tank positions. The EPWs were eventually taken into custody, the prisoners of war, and as far as we know, there were no casualties, not of Iraqis, and not of the Marines as well. So in any soldier's mind, that is the best of scenarios where you destroy the weaponry and the people survive. And in this case, they've been taken into custody and being interrogated now. And the British tank here is starting to move. It's handy having the tows, but obviously a tank is even better when you still have some question as to what the threat may be in the area. So the British are coming up just to add their sense of backbone here with that kind of firepower.
Martin, it's interesting that
and
British...
the tows continue to be focused down the street.
Martin, it's interesting that British
Carol, go
troops...
ahead.
It's interesting that British troops are now involved, but this is under American military command. How many British troops are there with you?
Well, I don't know how many British troops actually are with us specifically. There was an overall force contributed of about 45,000 British troops, and they are British Marines, and also, in this case, you have British armor. They have been working, obviously, in conjunction. They're part of the coalition. They have their own military objectives. They are working in the command structure of the U.S. military, but they are also working as independent units themselves, meaning they don't necessarily mix with the American forces at the same time. They are given an objective. They are told that's what needs to be done in order to fulfill the coalition's desire, and they carry it out. In this particular case, what they're doing is the Marines, U.S. Marines, came into this area near Basra yesterday. They were designed to race in, grab it, and hold it for about 24 hours. Then a heavier British force would follow on, and it's the British who will remain here and keep it secure, and that allows the Marines, obviously, a much more mobile fighting force to continue on their way and continue the fight and continue to Baghdad, which is the eventual goal.
Martin, does an operation like what we've seen in this last hour with you, does it slow up the other forces that are out there that are traveling in conjunction with the troops, with the Marines that you are with? When one unit takes an incoming RPG round, how does that affect the larger unit?
Well, I suppose that's a good question to ask. The truth is, no, it doesn't affect the overall operation. If someone thinks that by opening fire on a couple of Marines, that all the Marines are now going to close on this area and that the air power is going to come in and that allows someone to sneak out the back door, that is not the case. The Marines are well equipped, even with these small units, to deal with most of what comes their way. So they simply take on the task, take out the threat. The remainder of the Marines continue doing their job, patrolling the perimeter around this oil facility here, or rearming, refueling the vehicles, getting ready to move on, getting rest, getting meals, digging in if that's the case, or handing over to British forces that come upon their position. So this really has no impact whatsoever on the overall effort. That is continuing and well on its way. It's just another day on the job for this particular unit. They know they can handle it. They don't have to call in massive reinforcements. They're fine for now. If they need them, they're standing by just in case.
Martin, your cameraman was showing us plumes of smoke in the distance, white smoke, dark smoke. Do you know what that is from? Is that from other ordnance, other exploding tanks or oil fires? Do you know?
It's not oil fires you're looking at there. That is basically the demolition of Iraqi military hardware. That's what the black smoke, the white smoke could be, any sort of different things inside of those vehicles going off. But that smoke you're seeing right immediately here is just, there goes another one. I don't know if you saw the flash there. It's just Saddam's hardware being taken apart piece by piece. And that is something the U.S. military wants to do and did extensively after the Gulf War.
And you probably didn't get much of a chance to examine Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just being told there's a number of enemy forces down the highway here, beyond where we were, and they have been taken out now by, was it Cobra attack helicopter, Scotty? And I think the British forces are going to move on. All right. So as I get in front of the cameraman to the reporter now, that the assault was carried out at this farther village where there were Iraqi forces by the Cobra attack helicopters. It's a very maneuverable, high-speed, and heavily armed helicopter. That has dealt with the threat there. The British forces that we've seen, the tank moving down the road, they are going to move down and watch over that village. One, to protect the non-combatants who are there, and also to keep an eye on at least one guy with an RPG, who is a pesky one this afternoon for us. I think that's pretty much about it from here for right now. And I think we all need a moment just to sort of collect ourselves a bit and get our gear in order to move along. So if we could pass it back to Anderson and Carolyn, and we'll just take a well-needed rest for a moment.
Well deserved. Stay safe, Martin. We'll check in with you a little bit later on.
Yeah, it's nice to know that he finally has his helmet on too. I'm sure his family would be grateful because I'm sure they're watching.
Yeah.
Here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I'm worried about Martin.
Yeah, as we all are. We're going to, and as well as the Marines who he is traveling with and his crew and camera people. We're going to check in with Bill Hemmer, who is in Kuwait City at this moment. Bill, I don't know if you've been able to watch those pictures. I assume you have. Just extraordinary.
Wow. Yeah, extraordinary with a capital E. Anderson, just so our viewers know, Martin Savage and Scott McWhinney, about a year ago at this time, were accompanying the U.S. Army into eastern Afghanistan, Operation Anaconda. If our viewers remember and recall the video, they were the eyes and the ears, the only members of the media who accompanied the U.S. military on that operation into the hills of eastern Afghanistan. If you listen to Marty and Scott tell the stories, boy, it is absolutely amazing what they went through. And again today, what we're hearing firsthand from them is truly extraordinary. South of that location where Marty's reporting, the town of Qasa, we continue to get reports of sporadic fighting there. We talked about a new port and an old port. Apparently the new port is secure. The old port still has some questions though. CNN's Jason Bellini now joins us by way of video phone to tell us what he is seeing from his location now. Jason, hello. All right, we'll get back to Jason in a moment. Here in the meantime, though, I'm told Walt Rogers has more developments. If you were with us yesterday, Walt was the one traveling with the 7th Cavalry up through central and southern Iraq, moving at a pretty good clip. Today, hours ago, they were stopped and halted. Walter joins us now for an update. Walt, what do you have?
Hello, Bill. The 7th Cavalry still remains halted, at least for the time being. What's happened is that a small but determined detachment of Iraqi soldiers ahead of the cavalry of just a few miles has put on a surprisingly determined stand and has actually forced the cavalry to park its tanks beside the road. This has not been a head-to-head confrontation, but when the cavalry commanders discovered that there was a determined and hostile force ahead of this unit, they began to call in artillery. The artillery pounded the Iraqi detachment, which is ahead of us, but that still did not dispel it. They called in the Kiowa helicopters. Kiowa helicopters are lightly armed, but nonetheless able to do considerable damage to a light force, and we don't know how many Iraqis were out there. Kiowa helicopters were surprised because the Iraqis started firing heavy machine guns at the helicopters, which fly very low and close to the ground. Pretty easy target for a machine gun. Additionally, the Kiowas came in for air defense missiles, that is shoulder-fired missiles, and so the helicopters had to fly very nimbly, very agilely to avoid getting shot down. None was. Again, that same Iraqi detachment behind us up the road there also ended up firing some mortars at another troop of the 7th Cavalry, the Crazy Horse Troop. No American soldier has been injured, no helicopter shot down, but it has been a tough little battle up there, so much so that just a short while ago, the Army had to call in, get help from the Air Force. Air Force sent in an A-10 Warthog, rather slow-flying jet, but one which generates enormous flying power, and the A-10 aircraft's a tank destroyer, but one which sprays enormous amount of ammunition through a Gatling gun, just plowed through the area. The Army says they think most of the dismounts have been destroyed. Now, dismounts being the infantry soldiers that the Iraqis have up there. They're hoping that all the anti-aircraft weapons are put out of action, the heavy machine guns and the shoulder-fired missiles. But again, the Army's moving very cautiously at this point as it goes on its way to Baghdad. The reason being they encountered a rather substantially determined Iraqi force, which has actually forced them to park the tanks on the side of the road. Now, there's no question the tanks could push through that Iraqi detachment up there, but the commanders are saving those tanks for a much larger battle, which they expect to come in Baghdad. So what the Army's done is pounded this Iraqi detachment, first with the artillery, then with the helicopters, and then ultimately they called in the Air Force with the A-10 Warthog to strafe the area. Still not sure that the 7th Cavalry can go ahead, but the Iraqis put up a serious little fight up there. Back to you. Bill?
Walter, the 7th Cav primary mission there is to scout, get in front of the 3rd Infantry Division and find out what the best and easiest route might be going north. Is this the first time you've been stopped? And if you go back to yesterday when we saw these fascinating pictures of you moving sometimes at 40 miles an hour, have you seen movement like that earlier today?
Absolutely. We started about 11 o'clock last night, or midnight. It's mid-afternoon here, I believe. Haven't had a chance to look at my watch. The 7th Cavalry moved very, very rapidly earlier in the day, but then when they reached this point here, they received word through their reconnaissance flights that, in fact, there was an Iraqi detachment up there, again, of undisclosed size, but one that made a surprising nuisance of itself, has put up a very significant fight, represented itself more than honorably for the Iraqi people, and they have temporarily forced the cavalry to park beside the road. Now, the cavalry never was in any danger. No U.S. soldier was injured, although the helicopters were indeed fired upon. They had to do some ducking and dodging when the heavy machine guns were brought to bear on them. They also had to do some ducking and dodging when the shoulder-fired missiles that the Iraqis had were brought to bear on the U.S. Kiowa helicopters. No helicopter was shot down there. Extraordinarily skilled pilots who literally duck and weave and bob about 30 to 40 feet above the ground. But this engagement has slowed the progress of the 7th Cavalry, that is 3rd Squadron, U.S. Army 7th Cavalry forward. And right now there's an assessment going on to see if indeed it is safe to proceed down this road, which leads north to Baghdad. But that's still a good many kilometers, good many miles in the distance. Bill?
Yeah, Walter, we have talked to you almost nonstop for the past 2 days. One report says the men in your unit have not slept for 60 hours. Is that accurate, or when do you take time to rest?
That's true, Bill, and nor have we. And I've talked to these soldiers, and they literally have been rolling, if not rolling 60 hours, busy refueling or conducting maintenance on their vehicles. Before the rain showers today, we were traveling through choking clouds of dust. So that means the air filters on the tanks and the Bradley vehicles have to be taken out with a steam cleaner, blown dry right beside the vehicle, and then reinserted. There is no rest. There's almost no place to sleep. None of us neither no soldier in the 7th Cavalry nor anyone in the CNN crew has lain horizontally and had any sleep, probably for well over 60 hours now, probably pushing 70. But it's not bad. There's an adrenaline rush, and the soldiers are very well motivated, so that's not an issue. But indeed, they say they have gone 60 hours without sleep. I don't have any doubts about that at all. Bill?
Walter Rogers again traveling through the southern part of Iraq, and it has been fascinating to watch him go. More than 60 hours right now on the road. We'll check back in with Walter as soon as we get more, again, with the 7th Cav moving up through. More in a moment from Kuwait City. Back to the CNN Center now. Here's Anderson and Carol yet again.
Bill, we haven't really talked about much what's happening in Kuwait today, and we wanted to get your sense of the... We're going to go to a break right now. I apologize.
We'll check in with you shortly, Bill, on the other side of this hour. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
There must be 50 ways the AeroBed saves the day. Like reason 19, you've got the guest room, but no guest bed. Number 3, your guest bed invites your guest to go away. Relax. Just plug in the AeroBed, push the button, and you have a comfortable, adjustable extra bed in less than 1 minute. The new pump is recessed and is 30% more powerful with quadra-coil construction for a smoother surface. It's even adjustable with our exclusive one-touch comfort control. And it can hold up to 650 pounds. Plus, it stores away in seconds. And now you can get the new and improved AeroBed at the same low price.
Call now to get the AeroBed for just 3 easy payments of only $33.
Plus, get this free carry bag and get our 30-night money-back guarantee.
Buy now. That's just 3 payments of $33 or visit a fine retail store near you.
How many ways will you use your AeroBed?
Welcome back to what has been an extraordinary early morning of CNN coverage of the ongoing Operation Iraqi Freedom. Let's get a look at what's happening at this hour in southern Iraq. Allied forces working to fully secure the strategic port city of Qasr. If you've been watching us, don't need to tell you that. We've been bringing it to you live for the last 2 hours or so. Helicopters fired on unknown pockets of resistance. Choppers circled around the UN compound. You're seeing one of those choppers right there skirting along the top of the screen. There's another one, Cobra attack helicopters around the UN compound. That was a compound used at the Oil for Food program in Iraq. CNN's Martin Savage is embedded with a U.S. Marine unit in southern Iraq that came under fire just a short time ago. Fire from an RPG round, rocket-propelled grenade. The action came after the unit had captured an Iraqi oil field near Basra. The Marines had been blowing up abandoned Iraqi tanks when they came under fire. That explosion you're seeing in the distance is one of those tanks, a T-55. It's an old Soviet tank that the Iraqis basically had all but abandoned. Marines weren't taking any chances, blew it up. More casualties of war after 2 British Royal Navy helicopters collided over the Persian Gulf. The choppers collided shortly after takeoff from an aircraft carrier. We're showing you a graphic right now of the Sea King. That's the kind of helicopter involved in this. 6 British crew members, 1 American killed in that accident. And the U.S. military unleashed some of the most powerful weapons in its arsenal. This seems like a long time ago, but it actually wasn't. Hitting targets overnight in Baghdad and other locations with hundreds of precision-guided bombs. Among the sites hit were so-called palaces that headquartered the Republican Guard. That's a shot from earlier this morning in Iraq, Iraqi TV. The Iraqi government says one palace was a guest house for visiting dignitaries, and another was a museum. That, of course, from the statement from the Iraqi government. The U.S. Army's 3rd Squadron, 7th Cavalry, has exchanged gunfire with Iraqi troops to the north. The squadron has penetrated more than 100 miles into south-central Iraq, not giving anything away there. That is public information. The cavalry's mission, find the safest and fastest route, target Baghdad. But it is capable of delivering deadly force when fired upon. Elsewhere in Iraq in the north, CNN's Kevin Seitz reports that Iraqi mortar rounds were fired into Kurdish-controlled northern Iraq. This just came in the last couple of minutes or so. No casualties are reported. The action follows U.S. bombing overnight of an area controlled by a suspected terror group linked to al-Qaeda. More on that in this coming hour. Welcome back. I'm Anderson Cooper, the CNN Center in Atlanta.
I'm Carol Costello from the global headquarters as well.
And I believe we have a live picture from some of the damage in Baghdad that we're going to show you. Maybe not. We'll just come back to that later. Let's take a fast-forward look at some of the war-related events that are expected to happen later today. Let's take a look at that. President Bush will monitor the war from Camp David this weekend. The Maryland retreat fully equipped to keep the president informed and connected with all aspects of the military campaign. It is a Marine facility, after all. Anti-war protesters say they will stage a die-in, that's what they call it, at a home near Taos, New Mexico. Who's the home belong to? Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. It's one of 6 homes he owns in northern New Mexico. And Sunday's Oscar ceremony is a go, that is for now, but the Academy president says that could change if circumstances warrant. And here's our short review of the ground gained by coalition forces. The U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division, spearheaded by the 7th Cavalry, has penetrated more than 100 miles inside Iraqi territory. U.S. and British forces have secured the Faw Peninsula, Iraq's only outlet to the Persian Gulf, and its oil-pumping terminal. And in western Iraq, coalition forces also captured 2 key airfields, those H3 and H2 there on the left-hand side of your screen on that map, including one suspected of being a possible site for WMD, weapons of mass destruction.
A lot happening this morning. We want to toss it now live to Bill Hemmer, who is in Kuwait City. Good morning, Bill.
Carol, asking about Kuwait City a short time ago, I can tell you relatively quiet again here today in this country, and very quiet when you consider we're watching and hearing the images from Marty and our colleagues working out in southern Iraq. It has just been amazing to watch these images come to you here live on CNN. Also, in the desert today, Dr. Sanjay Gupta is with the Marines. Earlier in the week, we met up with Sanjay, who was at Camp Iwo Jima. We know today that Sanjay is still in Kuwait, northern part of the country, and the weather's a bit nasty today, a bit of a sandstorm at times. Sanjay, good afternoon. What's happening there?
Hey, good afternoon, Bill. Yeah, we're at an undisclosed location. I don't want to tell you exactly where we are, but we are with a military convoy, part of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. Convoys are a really important part of the entire plan, obviously, to try and resupply, bring some supplies up. I am wearing a MOP suit. Bill, you're familiar with these. You've seen these. I can tell you one thing about them. They're very good at protecting you from any kind of chemical and biological sort of weapon, but they're also very hot. It's hot out here today. I also want to introduce you to someone, Lieutenant Philpott, who is the convoy commander. I'm going to ask him a few questions, Bill, a little bit about what a convoy does, and introduce you to him. First of all, thank you for joining us.
Not a problem.
Tell us a little bit about this convoy. We're getting some big pictures. Tell us how long it is and what you can about it.
It's a good-sized convoy. We're going to run about 3 miles long. What we're going to do is move some cargo up north, make sure that everybody that needs the cargo is sustained, and can continue with their mission.
What is the biggest concern about doing this sort of thing? You know, we're 3 days, 4 days, depending on how you look at it, into a war. You move in a very large convoy. What are your concerns as the commander?
Security is the foremost concern. We want to make sure you've taken all the precautions as far as any possibility that can occur to you. We have immediate actions to take care of that, and everybody's well trained to adapt.
And sort of support, in terms of the support, in terms of security for the convoy. Can you talk about that?
That's what my team does. We have security and command and control. We've spread the Marines out throughout the convoy with different weapon systems, security elements, and they make sure the convoy's not going to have any problems.
About 3 miles long is this convoy, right?
That's correct.
And tell me about some of the things it's going to actually be transporting.
Different classes of cargo as far as food, water, fuel, ammunition, all the things you need to sustain a combat unit.
Yeah. Okay, another thing we just mentioned, Bill and I were talking about the MOP suits.
Yeah.
That stands for the Military Operation Preparedness suits, essentially. You're wearing one right now. Can you talk about that? First of all, what does it do? What does it protect you against?
It's for the possibility of any kind of NBC attack. We know that there's a possible threat out there, so we want the Marines and soldiers to be ready just in case.
But there's been no actual confirmed chemical or biological.
There's been none. There's been no reports, but we're not going to take a chance to make sure that everybody's protected.
Are you pretty warm in that?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us.
No problem.
Bill, a very large convoy. We're part of this, 3 miles long. We are going to be doing exactly what Lieutenant was saying. We're trying to move all these supplies up. Obviously, we won't say exactly where we are because of security concerns, but back to you, Bill, in Kuwait City.
All right, Dr. Sanjay Gupta again with the U.S. Marines in northern Kuwait. We had an indication yesterday One report that the main road leading into Iraq had been virtually secured by U.S. and British forces. It's quite possible that the convoy may be moving its way up through this road into the southern part of Iraq a bit later today. It's about 1 o'clock local time here in Kuwait, same time in Baghdad. I want to show you now some daytime pictures, videotape taken in downtown Baghdad shortly after the sun came up earlier today. Clearly in these images you can see the damage that was done from the overnight bombing. We can see videotape with the buildings still smoking, some of them still burning, we're told. Earlier today, we were told the streets, as one could be expected, are almost empty of Iraqi citizens living and working there. Last night, nighttime images right around 9 o'clock local time in downtown Baghdad. For about a 7-minute period, the shock and awe campaign was kicked off over Iraq. And for 7 minutes, the barrage did continue with thunderous explosions, shaking and rattling, reverberations described to us as felt by 15 miles away. It died down a short time after that, but throughout the night there was sporadic bombing throughout the city of Baghdad. We're told the Republican Guard Palace was hit. That sits right along the Tigris River, home to Iraq's elite Republican Guard troops. One Iraqi official describes that area today as being in ruins. Also told the Office of Foreign Ministry was hit. The Military Planning Office hit as well. In a briefing earlier today in downtown Baghdad, the Iraqi officials who came to the microphones greeting reporters there says everything right now the U.S. military is talking about has been propaganda and lies. A short clip from that briefing a short time ago.
Casualties among civilians until now. In hospitals there are 207 people, women, children and other civilians, and we will take you, if you like, to visit them and see for yourselves.
That was the word earlier from Baghdad. They also said it was a cowardly assault launched by the U.S. and British forces. They deny the claim that the Pentagon says 300 missiles hit in downtown Baghdad. They say only 19 missiles fell and fell in only a small area. Another claim from the Iraqis earlier today in Baghdad. They say the prisoners taken as prisoners of war in southern Iraq were essentially civilians kidnapped, dressed up in Iraqi soldier uniforms. They again call this all lies by the U.S. military. We will hear from the military later today in Qatar. The forward command post for Central Command, Tommy Franks, head of CENTCOM, will brief for the first time since the military action got underway. We expect that around 5 o'clock local time. Back in the U.S., that's 9 a.m. Eastern time, again out of Qatar. The first time we will hear from Tommy Franks, and of course, you'll see it live here on CNN when that happens. More from Kuwait City a bit later. Now, Carol Anderson, back to you at the CNN Center.
All right, many thanks to you, Bill Hemmer, live in Kuwait City. You know, something that might complicate the U.S. military effort. We have word that 1,000 Turkish troops, well, we just have word that the British Defense Secretary Geoffrey Hoon is speaking in London. Let's listen in to hear what he has to say.
I can confirm that 7 aircrew are missing. A search and rescue mission has been mounted, but as yet no survivors have been found. Our priority at this time is to notify the next of kin at the earliest opportunity. Cause of the accident is being investigated, and although this will be of no comfort to the families concerned, the crash is not believed to be the result of enemy action. I hope that you will understand why we cannot give further information until next of kin have been contacted. With regard to yesterday's CH-46 helicopter crash, I can confirm that the next of kin of the 8 men killed in the crash have now all been informed. At the request of the families, we will not release further details until later. Over the past 24 hours, you will have seen the military plan start to take shape on the ground. What we are looking to do is to achieve a series of effects to which the Iraqi regime simply cannot respond. We can do this whilst at the same time reducing the risk of civilian casualties. Indeed, we believe that this is the right way to minimize such risk. The coalition is now therefore working simultaneously along several lines of operation. First of all, through information operations, we're making clear to the Iraqi armed forces and to Iraq's civilian population the coalition's resolve to achieve our objectives. the removal of Saddam Hussein's regime and its weapons of mass destruction. You'll have seen pictures of the Iraqi armed forces responding to this and recognizing that there is no need for them to fight for Saddam Hussein. Through ground maneuver, we are rapidly securing Iraqi territory. Again, as you will have seen from reporting overnight, the Iraqi 51st Division has stopped fighting. The US Army's 5th Corps has secured 2 bridges over the Euphrates. Admiral Boyce will say more about events on the ground in a moment. But last night was, of course, dominated by the air campaign, and in particular by attacks on targets in Baghdad. I want to say a little more about the underlying purpose of that campaign. It has sought to meet a number of objectives. As far as possible, we have been attempting to minimize the risk of the Iraqi regime using its weapons of mass destruction. First and foremost, this has required attacks on the regime's ability to communicate and exercise command and control over these weapons, as well as attacking potential delivery sites. A particular focus has therefore been on communications facilities, both within Baghdad and throughout Iraq. I want to show how we are aiming to inflict damage on the Iraqi regime itself, whilst leaving civilian infrastructure intact. This first slide shows a map of central Baghdad. Many of the key regime facilities are concentrated in the center along the west bank of the Tigris River. In the box, which in a moment will be highlighted in greater detail, you will be able to see the concentration of so-called presidential palaces and regime headquarters in one particular area of the city. All along the river bank is in effect an area closed to ordinary Iraqis, populated by senior figures in the regime from which they operate. And our attacks, therefore, have sought to send clear signals to that regime that it can no longer exercise its tyranny over the Iraqi people. By isolating regime leaders from security forces under their control, we're sending a very clear message, a message that they can no longer exercise control through the threat of force, and a clear message as well to the ordinary people of Iraq that the days of this appalling regime will soon be over. Finally, in order to facilitate such attacks and enable close air support to our ground forces, it has been necessary to achieve air superiority by reducing the threat from the Iraqi integrated air defense systems. And again, I want to give you some general examples of the kinds of targets that we have been attacking. They include, as you see here, intelligence and security organizations, which are instrumental in the repression of the Iraqi people, command and control structures, for example, bunkers in the so-called presidential palaces, Iraqi military capability, for example, surface-to-surface weapons, and their integrated air defense system, radar and surface-to-air missiles. The targets have been selected for the effects that will be achieved, rather than to produce physical destruction for its own sake. In considering every pre-planned target, we go through a rigorous process of weighing the military advantage against the danger to civilian life and property. I personally oversee this process. Let me illustrate this point with 2 examples of the types of targets which our forces attacked last night. The main headquarters of the Iraqi intelligence service in Baghdad, a key part of the regime's intelligence and security network, was attacked last night with the United Kingdom Tomahawk missile fired from a British submarine. This was a carefully targeted strike which will have had significant effect on the ability of the Iraqi intelligence service to contribute to the internal repression carried out by Saddam Hussein's regime. Attacks on this and other Iraqi intelligence service facilities will remove from the Iraqi regime a key source of its power, reducing the potential threat to coalition forces and reducing its ability to terrorize the people of Iraq. We also carried out a successful attack against the main sector air defense bunker in Kirkuk. This operations center provides command and control for Iraqi Air Force interceptors and strategic surface-to-air missiles. By destroying or disrupting the operations center, we gain and maintain coalition airspace superiority, reducing the risk to our aircraft operating in the area. I was asked at yesterday's press conference how we resolve the apparent dichotomy between our commitment to the use of minimum force and the overwhelming nature of the air campaign. I hope that what I have said today has addressed this issue for you. The use of overwhelming force during last night's attacks was not designed to turn Iraq into a wasteland. Rather, it was aimed at inflicting damage on the Iraqi regime whilst leaving civilian infrastructure as intact as possible. As last night's dramatic television coverage showed, the lights stayed on in Baghdad, but the instruments of tyranny are collapsing. Mike?
Thank you, Secretary of State. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as you've heard from the Secretary of State, coalition forces have continued to make significant progress in all environments. But before I give you some details about our campaign so far, I'd like once again to echo the words of the Secretary of State and send my deep condolences to the families of the servicemen who lost their lives last night in that mid-air collision between two of our helicopters in the Gulf. Well, we did have a huge increase in activity in the scale of our coalition effort last night, and this tightening of the screw on Saddam's regime included the high-intensity attacks on targets in Baghdad and Kirkuk and other areas along the lines the Secretary of State has described. In terms of scale, I can tell you that as of early today, coalition air forces have flown some 3,000 plus sorties and delivered a very large package of precision weapons, including the Tomahawk missiles, which are fired by our own submarines. Now, let me give you some more detail about other operations. Some of you might have expected there to have been some sort of pause to coalition progress, but this has not been the case. In the Basra area, the Iraqi 51st Division has surrendered, and we have many thousand prisoners of war. Seven Armoured Brigade, the Desert Rats, have been very much involved in the approach to Basra, and they're on the outskirts at the moment, and they'll be consolidating their position today. Further off to the west, the United States 5 Corps advance has gone well, and they've reached beyond Talil Airfield in the Nasiriyah area, and they've secured also bridges over the Euphrates, and they're well placed now for rapid exploitation towards the north, the west, and of course Baghdad. Meanwhile, back in the south of Iraq, 16 Air Assault Brigade is now on the move to occupy the southern oil fields and consolidate our position there, the coalition position there. And with these oil fields now firmly in coalition hands, our UK engineers are now at work making safe the wellheads which had been prepared for demolition. And we're also expecting contractors to help them today. We believe that 9 wellheads will need the services of the contractors. We've had specialist UK teams trained to deal with explosive ordnance disposal, and RAF and Royal Tank Regiment NBC teams also deployed forward with the United States Regimental Combat Teams. The report all over the oil infrastructure is that practically all of the oil and gas separation platforms were mined or booby-trapped. It doesn't say a lot for Saddam Hussein's thoughts of his own people that he's prepared to blow up his entire economy. The challenging task of making all these areas safe is now well underway. So the southern Iraq oil infrastructure has been captured intact by the coalition, and it's certainly averted the potential possibility of environmental disaster. And it really does raise the hope that Iraq's natural resources can be turned back to the advantage of the Iraqi people. And of course, this is so important for the Oil for Food programme. On the maritime front, there are a number of challenges, but the biggest is the need to ensure that seaborne access to Qusar port is safe to allow humanitarian aid to flow quickly into southern Iraq. On the Al-Faw Peninsula, operations by 3 Commander Brigade restarted at first light this morning to secure the entire area. But the sea mine threat in the waterway there is real and must be dealt with first. And so our mine countermeasure vessels are on the job. HMS Brocklesby, Blythe, Bangor, they've been at work to ensure safe delivery of that waterway. And we've also had our UK fleet clearance diving teams busy in the port area to make safe any demolitions there. This early start to mine clearance operations, of course, as I said, is to allow access to key shipping, particularly RFA Sir Galahad, who will be bringing humanitarian relief into the port.
And we're going to take you live back to Qasr in just a bit. We're going to wrap up this press conference. In fact, we're going to jump out of it right now. At the beginning of that press conference, you heard the British Defense Secretary mention a helicopter crash in the Persian Gulf. I want to tell you more about that because an American was involved. Apparently, 2 British Navy Sea King helicopters crashed in midair shortly after takeoff over the Persian Gulf. 6 British crew members aboard, 1 American. Not clear why the American was on board with the British crew members, but all 7 have died. Now we want to talk about Turkey because we have heard that 1,000 Turkish troops are about to go into northern Kuwait northern Iraq, I'm sorry. 1,000 Turkish troops about to go in or already in northern Iraq, and that complicates things for the U.S. military. Let's go live to Silpuli, Turkey, and Frederica Whitfield. Frederica, what have you heard about Turkish troops going into Iraq?
Well, hi there, Carol. Well, indeed, some conflicting reports on whether those 1,500 Turkish commandos have indeed crossed the border and into northern Iraq. Conflicting reports because some of the officials here at the border, which is about 6 or 7 miles from where I'm standing here in Silivri, Turkey, they are saying that those troops have not been able to cross the border. However, some of those same sources are saying that now some Turkish tanks could be soon making its way across the border. Now, of course, you know, this has been a real bone of contention between the Turkish authorities and the American authorities. The Americans saying that this is certainly going to conflict with their planned operations in northern Iraq. Particularly, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said that this is a plan. The Turks' plan to move their troops in would be an unhelpful plan, and that is because Rumsfeld was warning that U.S. Special Forces have been working closely with Kurdish troops in this Kurdish territory of northern Iraq, and perhaps there may be potential conflicts between the Turkish troops and the Kurdish troops, or consequently between Turkish troops and American troops. And then beyond that, the Defense Department is warning that there could potentially be conflicts between the Turkish troops and Saddam forces, who may be trying to take over any rich oil fields in the Northern Territory. Now, all that taking place while we know just hours ago, overnight, Turkish government did finally allow and open their airspace for U.S. military overflights. Now, it was Thursday night when the Turkish parliament agreed and gave the green light, so to speak, to the U.S. military to carry out those operations. But here it took over 24 hours in order to finally open up that airspace. Now, when and if the U.S. flights do take advantage of that open airspace, this is how it would work. From the northern corridor, bombers coming from possibly Bulgaria or even Hungary would be traveling south over Turkish airspace between Istanbul and Tagazal. They would be finding their way south into the northern Iraqi territory. Then from the southern corridor, fighter jets coming from the USS Truman and Roosevelt would head briefly north, avoiding Syrian airspace, then looping around the southern Turkish border before flying overhead, possibly right over here of Silopi, Turkey, and into northern Iraq. Now, there have been no reports of that U.S. military jet or bomber activity as of yet, and I think we would hear it when and if it is to occur, but so far those operations have not taken place. Carol?
Frederica, going back to the Turkish troops possibly in northern Iraq, take us through the history of that. We know the Turks and the Kurds don't get along, and we know that the Turkish government doesn't want any Kurdish refugees in Turkey. Why?
Right. That's right. That's, in fact, one of the things that the Turks want to avoid. They want to avoid any kind of Kurdish refugee overflow like they saw during the Gulf War when 500,000 Kurds crossed the border into Turkish land. Now, the Turks want to avoid that. In addition to that, they want to avert the Kurdish-controlled Northern Territory from gaining independence to becoming an independent state. Already there's a Kurdish autonomy here, but the Turks are afraid that once the Kurds in northern Iraq were to gain independence, then perhaps the Kurds in the Turkish territory may make similar demands, reviving a 15-year conflict between the Turks and the Turkish Kurds. It's very confusing, but it all boils down to autonomy and independence, and that's something that the Turkish government wants very much to avoid, and that is how the Turkish government is justifying its troops heading into northern Iraq. Carol.
And of course, Frederica, right now, Washington isn't confirming that Turkish troops are in northern Iraq, but you got to believe Washington is on the phone with Turkish officials right now trying to straighten out that situation.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat the question because I had a little interference in the phone line that we're using in order to communicate with you. Could you say that one more time?
Sure can, Frederica. I said you have to believe that Washington is on the phone trying to deal with this problem with Turkish officials right now.
Oh, you better believe it. Those talks are ongoing because Washington is still very upset with the fact that the Turkish government has persisted and maintained its position in order to use its troops. And as I explained, Washington sees some real potential detriment for those troops to be moving in. But the Turks feel that they are justifiably keeping an eye out of their national interest, is the way they would like to put it, even though they are now operating unilaterally. And Washington is making that very clear and reminding this only Muslim NATO ally that their movement of their troops is working unilaterally, and they are not a part of the coalition of the willing, and so the U.S. wouldn't be able to protect them in the case of any potential conflict involving all of these various troops that may be clashing in the northern territory of northern Iraq.
Frederica Whitfield reporting live from Silivri, Turkey this morning. Thank you.
And CNN correspondents are all over this region in northern Iraq. Kevin Seitz, Brent Sadler, Jane Araf, all up there. We're going to check in with Brent Sadler, who apparently has some new information this morning. Brent, what's the latest?
Yes, Anderson, lots of loose ends flapping in a gale of diplomatic wrangling, as we heard from Frederica just then. What I can tell you is some details I'm getting from usually reliable Kurdish military sources that suggest that there is now planning well underway to bypass Turkey as far as the U.S. military presence, which is still expected in northern Iraq, is concerned. I understand these details involve a staging post in Jordan now for U.S. special forces that may already have got underway. Maybe as many as 200 special forces flying into Jordan, using that as a staging post to fly across the western desert into the north of Iraq from Jordan. That to be the vanguard, if you like, for a build-up of airborne troops numbering several thousand that could take up to a week to build up. Now this as a result of total exasperation, I understand from my contacts on the ground here, with Turkey's demands that it should be able to put its troops into northern Iraq at the same time as the US would deploy from Turkish soil or use Turkish airspace. Now the Kurds, on the other hand, are also outraged by Ankara's continuing justification for putting troops into northern Iraq on those two grounds that Frederica was talking about. One, the fear of a Kurdish refugee exodus, as we saw back in 1991, and to stabilize the area against possible independence-seeking Kurdish terrorists. Now, the Kurds say, look, turn the clock back to 97, more than 5 years ago, the Turks have had 800, 1,000 soldiers already on the ground. They have a small airbase at Bamani in the north of the country. And the Kurds are actually disputing the figures that Ankara is putting out right now. They're denying that there are as many as 1,000 Turkish troops in addition to those here that have come across. So this is really a very serious difficulty. The US, I'm told by Kurdish contacts here, is in a real hurry to tie up these loose ends, because if the Turks do come across, I'm told again that the Kurds would oppose it. I'm also told that the Kurds are in contact through their special forces with units of the opposition to Saddam Hussein on the other side of those hills behind me, in Mosul and in Kirkuk, those two major cities in the north which are still under the control of Saddam Hussein. Now, I understand also more details that US special forces that have been on the ground here for many, many months, some of those special forces were even involved in operations back in 1991, know the ground well, know the people well. They are, through the Peshmerga, the Kurdish fighters, special forces, making contacts with opposition groups over there, trying to test the temperature of the water. Now, this coupled with overnight airstrikes against Kirkuk and Mosul, not the kind of military pressure that's going to see those front lines behind me collapse at any time soon, but certainly this loose end, it's recognized by the Kurds and US military planners, cannot go on indefinitely.
All right,
back to you, Anderson.
Brent Sadler live in northern Iraq trying to tie up some of those loose ends. Brent Sadler, thanks very much. And a lot has been going on in northern Iraq as we've been following all morning. News that the U.S. had bombed, whether it was cruise missiles or bombs, we're not sure. Radical Islamic group Ansar al-Islam, that is, of course, is the group that Colin Powell at the United Nations said had al-Qaeda connections, harbored even an al-Qaeda member. That apparently the U.S. directly bombing them over the evening, I believe it was on Friday.
And in southern Iraq, a lot more action going on. I don't know if you saw the dramatic pictures that Martin Savage was bringing us from near Basra.
Yeah, extraordinary.
Yeah, extraordinary. And we're going to show you some more of these pictures. In fact, this is a live picture from his camera right now. This is video feeding in, rather. That live bug up there confused me. But this is video being fed in from that fierce, well, actually it was a battle because they were fired upon.
Right, U.S. Marines exploding some tanks using ordnance. They came, RPG round came in. Things were moving fast and furious. We're going to have that on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
It's in 9 out of 10 of the world's largest telecom carriers. 5 of the top 6 U.S. internet service providers, and 4 of the largest local phone companies in the U.S. What are these companies building into their business? The network capacity they need when they need it, from a network company they can rely on. Level 3 Communications, the network partner you can rely on.
Introducing New America Online 8.0. With hundreds of new features, there's never been a better time to try it.
You've got mail.
With 8.0, I can customize my email.
AOL's new parental controls I can set up for each one of my children.
Now AOL searches are faster than ever with Google. The customer service is free and it's 24 hours a day.
Call now and get 1,025 free hours for 45 days. There's no commitment and you don't even need a credit card.
America Online has so much more.
New AOL 8.0. With hundreds of new features, there's never been a better time to try it.
It is 5:33 Eastern Time. Want to bring you up to date at this hour. Our Martin Savage is with a group of U.S. Marines now battling forces in a village right outside of Basra. Our correspondent tells us the Marines found abandoned Iraqi tanks and were setting charges to blow them up when they were fired on with a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. Apparently someone in that small town they're in fired upon them. A British tank has also been called into that area. We're going to have much more on this in a moment. U.S. and British military troops have captured the Iraqi port of Qasr. Still, coalition helicopter gunships are battling pockets of resistance there. Our Christiane Amanpour is in the port and tells us some Iraqi troops have holed up in the abandoned UN compound there. Military officials anticipate having the facility under complete control by the end of the day. 6 British crew members and 1 American were killed when 2 British Navy Sea helicopters collided midair in the Persian Gulf. The accident happened around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 in the morning in the Gulf. Pentagon officials say the choppers collided shortly after taking off from an aircraft carrier. No identities, no names have been released as of yet. The U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division, spearheaded by the 7th Cavalry, has penetrated more than 100 miles into south-central Iraq. Our Walter Rogers is with the Apache troop, which is now stopped. In the last hour, he tells us the cavalry called in artillery and air support to break up an Iraqi detachment that's ahead of them. Also, targets in Baghdad and 3 other Iraqi cities have been the target of the U.S. military and its coalition. These are pictures of Baghdad overnight. Also being hit are targets in Tikrit, Kirkuk, and Mosul. 1 target hit in Baghdad, the Republican Guard Palace compound along the Tigris River. And the Allied aerial bombardment of Baghdad is expected to continue for another 8 hours. 2 other ceremonial palaces were struck, according to the Iraqi information minister, who says those two sites were not strategic targets. Of course, this according to the Iraqis. And good morning to you. I'm Carol Costello.
I'm Anderson Cooper. Thanks for joining us here at the CNN Center. If you're just waking up, there has certainly been a lot of activity in the last several hours that we have been following very closely through our embedded correspondents, both in northern Iraq and particularly Martin Savage, Christiane Amanpour, and Jason Bellini in southeastern Iraq in the city of Qasr, also on the road to Basra. We're going to have updates from them coming up in the next half hour to 45 minutes, we hope. Right now, we're going to check in with Bill Hemmer, who is live in Kuwait City. Bill?
Anderson, for the past several days, it's quite clear right now that our journalists embedded with the military are the chief source of information for us to learn what's happening right now inside the borders of Iraq. And what Marty Savage and his crew filed about an hour ago is absolutely riveting. A group of U.S. Marines working on the outskirts of the town of Basra, Iraq's second largest city, population about 400,000. The Marines at that time were working their way on the outskirts of the town, blowing up tanks, old T-55 tanks. We've got some new videotape we can show you. Have a look and a listen at this, and then we'll show you again what Marty filed about an hour ago. What you're seeing here is the videotape that photographer Scott McWhinney has filed into the CNN Center just within the past 30 minutes. If you were with us last hour, and if you weren't, some absolutely riveting television. Marty Savage by way of videophone as they work their way through this small village. Here is a sample again of what Marty filed live just about 60 minutes ago.
This is a CAT team, they refer to it. It's basically heavily armed with your Mark 19 automatic grenade launchers and your TOW missiles, which you now see at the front and back of us. And these are very highly mobile. They can run and gun, and they pick off armor, and that's the way they work. There'll be other people that are out there spotting and say, hey, we may see a tank moving, we may see this, or we may see that. And you quickly call in a TOW, they peek around the corner, launch, and then get out of the way again. So it's actually a very mobile, very effective means of fighting, unlike a tank, which can be slow to go. Take a look back here one more time. This tank continues to cook off. You should see the shells inside of these things. They are quite massive. But again, the inside of the tank does not look well used, so it doesn't appear that somebody's been using these very recently.
So
Martin, I'm sorry. I was just wondering about the town again and how many people were still there and if you could see anyone.
Well, we saw them as we initially came in. Of course, once the firing and the explosions occurred, the people have good sense to sort of melt away, to either get inside their homes or stay out of the line of fire, because they realize, of course, that the Marines are going to be rather nervous with the situation around them. So it's always wise to just stay indoors. So we don't see anybody around us now. But as we pulled up, yes, there were a lot of people who are genuinely curious. Now, that's part of the problem for the military here is, yes, they love to see the people. They're glad that the people seem to be happy to see them. However, force protection always being in their mind and not always being able to tell who has got good intent and who does not. They warn them continuously, stay away. They have announcements in Arabic that is usually done by the psychological ops group, going through the streets with loudspeakers just saying, stay away, stay in your homes and you'll be safe. So the interaction is on a very small level if it takes place, at least out here in sort of the front lines, as it were, because you're still trying to decipher the good from the bad.
Marty Savage again working on the outskirts of the town of Basra in southeastern Iraq. Since that time that report was filed, we do know they've gotten back in their Humvees and moved away from that village. Reports here in Kuwait today indicate that there is some sort of negotiations underway right now that would have the Iraqis surrender possibly the town of Basra. Not clear about the information going any further than that, but there are discussions right now underway between the Brits and the U.S. and the Iraqis on the other side. The news of the day here in Kuwait, 2 British helicopters have collided shortly after takeoff from an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. 7 dead, including 6 Brits and 1 American. That news breaking here several hours ago. We should hear more about this possibly in about 3 hours, 20 minutes from now, 5 o'clock local time, 9 a.m. on the East Coast back in the U.S. Tommy Franks, head of Central Command, operating now in Qatar. His first briefing since the military conflict unfolded late on Wednesday night. You'll see it live from Tommy Franks when we have it here for you on CNN. More from Kuwait a bit later. Carol Anderson, back to you now at the CNN Center.
Bill, thanks very much. We should just update our viewers if you're just joining us. Really, for the last several hours, we have been following some ongoing action in multiple parts of Iraq, but most notably in Qasr. The port town, strategically important, both in terms of establishing a port facility for U.S. military operations, but also for that humanitarian assistance that the U.S. military is very eager to try to get into this region as quickly as possible. There are two ports in Qasr. There is the old port, the new port. We heard from Christian Amanpour, who was in the new port, which was at the time that she was there, the British military was there. They had secured what we were seeing, and what you are seeing now, it's a tape picture. These are from about, I'm estimating 2 or so hours ago, Cobra attack helicopters circling around the old port area where our Jason Bellini was, where they were encountering sporadic pockets of resistance. Largely the town had been secured, but there were still these sporadic pockets of resistance. But Jason Bellini also reporting that in some of the Iraqi troops who were resisting, who had been captured, were not wearing Iraqi military uniforms. And this is perhaps ominous. We have talked so much about that urban combat that troops might face when they eventually get to Baghdad. Well, some of these pockets of resistance in Qasr were dressed as civilians, military clothing underneath their civilian garb. The military garb only became apparent once they had been taken into custody and searched very aggressively. Again, we are looking at some pictures just about 2 hours old, smoke rising out of some of these areas. The Cobra attack helicopters were used to attack these pockets of resistance. Also, Jason Bellini reporting with the Marines that they were going building to building, searching for pockets of resistance. Now what you're looking at is tape literally being fed in at this moment, tape shot by Martin Savage's crew in the same general vicinity on the road to Basra, outside of Basra. Martin Savage was with a group of Marines who were blowing up, searching out and blowing up abandoned Iraqi tanks. These are they were searching T-55 tanks. They were blowing them up with ordnance, also with TOW missiles. As they were undergoing that operation, all of a sudden an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade, whizzed by Martin Savage, hit a building in a nearby town. There you see a Marine jumping off a tank, blowing up the tank. That's a T-55 tank, we believe, which is the old Soviet-made tank bought by the Iraqi government, not the most modern tank. Those tanks basically abandoned, but there were ordnance inside the tank, so you're also going to see ongoing explosions coming from that tank. But again, the headline on that, the RPG that was fired. Marines responded with fire. You just saw some of that there. Let's listen in. Okay, they're continuing to drive here. The RPG apparently came from the town that they were in. They could not identify where exactly it came from, who fired it. It wasn't their mission to seek out. Let's listen to this. Again, these pictures just coming in. This is the first we are seeing of them. 50 caliber.
Pull on it, boys.
And really their objective here is to secure the oil fields in this area. That's why they were west of Basra.
And what they're immediately doing here, destroying our Iraqi tanks, trucks, whatever the Iraqis have sort of left behind. There were no Iraqi soldiers per se inside these vehicles at the time. They reported finding several men sort of milling about around the vehicles, but not dressed as Iraqi military. Again, these pictures are raw coming in. We were getting all of this live about an hour or so ago from a different camera from Martin Savage. He has two cameramen with him. These pictures are just coming in as we speak. But again, that RPG, that rocket-propelled grenade, did not, as far as we know, hit any Marines, but they are responding with a lot of caution, very understandably.
And another interesting point about the people standing around these empty Iraqi tanks, apparently they were in jogging suits. They looked like civilians. They had their hands up, but then that rocket-propelled grenade came at the Marines and they opened fire. As far as we know, though, no casualties as a result of that particular round of fire.
And again, this is just one of the things that the Marines of this unit is doing. Their mission, at least in this hour of this day, identify these Iraqi tanks, Iraqi fighting vehicles, destroy whatever they come across, and they are doing that very efficiently in this video. Let's watch what's going to happen to this tank. just saw the Marine jumping off it, assuming he put some sort of ordnance inside. I guess not. Again, this video all coming in raw, so you are seeing it as we are seeing it.
Yeah, and all the while Martin Savage had to keep moving because the Marines had opened fire. They didn't exactly know what was coming from the other side. And I believe that they were only fired on that one time by the rocket-propelled grenade.
Right. It was sort of a chaotic scene, and Martin Savage was reporting live all throughout it. There were shots going off. Hard to tell exactly what of it was Marines destroying other piece of equipment. In fact, we just saw about a minute or so ago a Marine with a .50 caliber machine gun shooting into a truck that had been abandoned, disabling that truck so that it couldn't be used in any future time.
And again, there's a small town nearby, and people were actually in the homes. In fact, they were out on the streets kind of applauding the U.S. military presence, and then as things started to develop, they sort of faded away into their homes and took cover for obvious reasons.
And initially it was sort of confused, as it often is on a battlefield, not sure where the fire was coming from, where that RPG came from. What it was later learned, and what Martin learned and told us live, was that the RPG actually came from within the town. So again, it made it a very difficult situation to identify.
And has Martin moved on now? Because I know British tanks had come in to secure the area, and Martin and the Marines have moved along.
That's right, they have moved along.
We want to go to Walter Rogers now in southern Iraq with the 7th Cavalry. At last check, they were still stopped. Are they still? It looks like they are. Walter?
Hello, Carol. I think the lead of the story, the military lead of the story all across the southern theater in Iraq, from where Martin Savage is in southeastern Iraq to where we are in south central Iraq, the lead of the story is that the Iraqis are not rolling over and playing dead despite overwhelming American military power. They are putting up at least nuisance resistance. That's what we've seen with the 3rd Squadron of the 7th U.S. Cavalry. They have been bogged down on this road for a number of hours now, because earlier in the day it was determined there was a detachment of Iraqi soldiers several miles up the road, and it was not clear how large the detachment was. It wasn't even clear the intentions of the detachment. Then the Iraqis began firing mortars at the Crazy Horse troop of the 7th Cavalry. That suggested very clearly to the commanders here that those Iraqis were going to stand and fight, even though they were overwhelmingly outnumbered by the United States. The Americans began firing 155 millimeter Paladin shells, laying these great arrays of artillery out there. Still, the Iraqi soldiers did not cut and run. Next thing, the Army sent in its helicopters. They began shooting at whatever remained after the artillery barrage, and more than a few Iraqi soldiers, the dismounts, were killed in the artillery barrage, but the others did not run. The Iraqi soldiers held their ground. What they did was stand and fight, and when the helicopters came over, the U.S. Army's Kiowa reconnaissance helicopters, the helicopters came under fire from these determined Iraqi troops. Shoulder-fired missiles were fired at the Kiowas, also some .50 caliber machine guns. The pilots of the Kiowas, 7th Cavalry, had to fly very nimbly, ducking and dodging to get out of the way. Still, the Iraqi soldiers did not cut and run. Then the Army called in a little help from the Air Force. The Air Force flew in its A-10 Warthog, which carries tremendous firepower, has a huge Gatling gun in the front that just tears up the ground in front of anything before it. The A-10 made passes over the ground. Apparently, the Iraqi threat, the detachment which was up the road, again, we don't know the size of that Iraqi detachment. They have been pretty well wiped out, according to the Army commanders here, Apache troop of the 7th Cavalry. But again, the Army is waiting just a little longer. It appears, however, that the threat has been eliminated at this point. It took longer than expected. The reason I conclude the threat's been eliminated is because suddenly we see refueling tanks coming up to refuel the tanks that were parked beside the road. That suggests that they wouldn't bring refueling tanks if there was a danger of artillery fire coming in. So the 7th Cavalry should start rolling northward on this road behind me very soon. But they were detained longer than expected. No U.S. casualties at all, no U.S. vehicles injured, but it does prove that even though the Iraqis are a weak force, badly outnumbered, they can be a nuisance.
Back to you.
Yeah, Walter, I was just going to ask you, this isn't the Republican Guard we're talking about. This is the Army that's supposedly disorganized. So this must have come as kind of a surprise to the U.S. military there.
I think it did. I wouldn't overrate what we saw today. What we're seeing is essentially a nuisance factor. If the Army decided to punch through with the tanks, the armored columns, they could obliterate anything there. The problem, of course, in doing that is that you take risks with your men and you take risks with your tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles you don't want to take at this point of the campaign because the Army is still a long way south of Baghdad. And the time to take the risks is when you get closer to Baghdad and when you encounter the very serious units, the Republican Guard units, which will be defending the southern gates of Baghdad. Again, the Iraqis are showing that they can and will make a fight, albeit a nuisance factor. The Army could have punched through, but the decision, and probably the prudent decision, was to do a standoff fight, keep the tanks, the soldiers here present at this time, and then fire the long-range artillery at them, then bring in the helicopters, use the helicopters' weapons against them, and when they still didn't complete it, they called in the A-10 Warthog, that old stalwart of anti-tank fights from before. No evidence the Iraqis had a tank up there, but they did have some very committed soldiers with anti-aircraft weapons. Back to you, Carol.
Walter Rogers reporting live from somewhere in southern Iraq with the 7th Cavalry.
And in northern Iraq right now, Kevin Seitz is standing by. He joins us via video phone with some new developments. Kevin?
Anderson, we don't have quite the compelling video that you're seeing with Marty Savage and so on, but there has been some interesting developments here in northern Iraq today. Our PUK sources, that's the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan sources, tell us that bombing in Kirkuk, which is about 40 kilometers from here, may not have been centered on the city. This gives evidence of that kind of pinpoint bombing that they've been talking about. The use of the 90% use of smart bombs here. Many of our PUK sources actually say that they've called family members within Kirkuk who have told them that they watched the bombing from their rooftops, and it was really headed west toward the military compound of Halid. That military compound apparently has an air base. It houses the 1st Iraqi Legion, as well as munitions, and many of the people said that they saw secondary explosions go on for hours after that first wave of bombing in Kirkuk, so that was an interesting development. You've heard from Federico Whitfield on the Turkish situation, as well as Brent Sadler about what's going on in the northern part of northern Iraq, the region next to Turkey. There's also been an interesting development on the border with Iran. Now, Ansar al-Islam, that is the fundamentalist group that Colin Powell has actually linked to al-Qaeda and says that is the connection that Saddam Hussein has with al-Qaeda here in Iraq. They're actually in Kurdish territory along the border with Iran, and apparently our sources tell us that the U.S. military phoned PUK people here to tell them that they fired 30 cruise missiles at Ansar al-Islam held towns and villages along that Iran-Iraqi border. And apparently that has motivated the PUK here, the Peshmerga fighters, that's the PUK militia. It literally means those who face danger or those who face death, to say that they're going to attack Ansar al-Islam either today or tomorrow. They feel that those positions have been softened up quite a bit and that it would be a prime time for them to take them on. This would be a relief to the U.S. They're concerned about that as a nest for terrorism. They consider it kind of a mini Taliban here in Iraq. And again, it was one of the prime reasons, according to Colin Powell and President Bush, to actually make this attack on Iraq. So it's an interesting development, and it will be interesting to watch in the next few days if there's an attack on the Ansar al-Islam positions by the Peshmerga here in northern Iraq.
Yeah, certainly a story.
Back to you, Anderson.
Certainly, Kevin, a story we will be following very closely in the coming hours and days. Thanks very much, Kevin Seitz, live in northern Iraq. Carol?
And of course, it was 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon when the shock and awe campaign began. And of course, everyone is wondering right now when it will continue. I want to toss it over to our military desk. Renee San Miguel is joined by General Shepard. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Carol and Anderson. Yes, there's been a lot going on overnight. For those just maybe waking up, we want to give an idea of what's going on in all parts of Iraq. And joining us now is our CNN military analyst, General Don Shepard. We just heard from Kevin Seitz in the north. They're talking about not just the possibility of al-Qaeda-related terrorists up there, but also some Turkish troops now complicating the picture.
Yeah, complicated situation very quickly here, Renee. 2 air corridors opened up from Turkey that the United States can use, but up here, Turkish incursion with about 1,000 troops into the PUK, Patriotic Democratic Union of Kurdistan area. Tension between these two. Turks say they want to have a buffer zone and take care of refugees. The PUK is very, very suspicious of that. Over here, the Ansar al-Islam in the eastern part of northern Iraq over here, many of their bases, camps being hit by air power yesterday.
Okay. Now, down to the south, we have seen some of the compelling video this morning from Martin Savage. Near Basra, also Qasr, there's still some resistance down there as well.
Yeah, the old port and the new port in Qasr down here, they're clearing out pockets of resistance in there. And up in the Basra area, some tank battles going on. Every village that you pass there has vehicles in it and people that you have to process, so it's slow going in that area. Meanwhile, over here, the 3rd Infantry Division is moving, but they're also coming up against villages with minor skirmishes going on there.
Okay.
Minor unless you're involved in them.
Okay, exactly. They're about 100 miles into Iraq from what we heard last from Walter Rogers. Now we want to go to what's going on with Baghdad, the second day of Shah-Kana expected here. And there were some palaces hit yesterday. Let's talk a little bit about the significance of those palaces.
Yeah, the palaces are not palaces as we think of the Versailles Palace and that type of thing.
Sure.
They're command and control headquarters. They are military installations. They have bunkers underneath them, command and control and communications facilities. This is the Republican Palace, one of the main palaces on the west bank of the Tigris River. It was hit very, very heavily, and it's one that you've seen Saddam appear in many times on television broadcasts.
Okay, and then we just go just north of that, another palace.
Yeah, there are actually 2 other palaces. The Peace Palace and the Flower Palace were also hit. All of these palaces will probably be hit in turn, again, because they are command and control and leadership facilities.
Okay, and then just one north of that really quickly, we want to just give some idea just how close these palaces are, and also the fact that there could be just very hardened underground bunkers underneath, hence the reason to hit these again.
They are indeed, and just north of this palace also is the Council of Ministers, where their legislature meets, if you will. Now, the important thing about all of these is they're on the west bank of the Tigris River in a confined area. This is not general bombing of downtown Baghdad.
Okay. We have some animation to show a cruise missile on its way into Baghdad. What goes on here from the beginning that it is launched, a conventionally launched cruise missile?
Right. These are launched. It's what's called a Calcum conventional air-launched cruise missile. It's about a 3,000-pound missile. The warhead in it is about 1,000 pounds, has a 600-mile range, travels at about 500 miles an hour, very hard to detect on radar. It goes in, it pops up and then dives into the target or can fly over the target. Many of these were used. Of the 1,000 targets hit yesterday, 600 of the targets were hit by these Calcum missiles and Tomahawk missiles fired off Navy ships as well. It's a very, very powerful weapon.
It is an amazing piece of technology, very fearsome as well, the idea that this kind of thing can come from hundreds of miles out and hit with such accuracy.
Indeed.
Don Shepard, thank you very much. Anderson and Carol, back over to you.
All right, thanks very much. A lot of things moving very quickly here. We are following them all in this next hour. Let's get a look at what's happening in this hour.
It is almost 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Let's bring you up to date. U.S. Marines destroying disabled Iraqi armor near Basra came under fire from a rocket-propelled grenade. CNN's Martin Savage, embedded with the unit, says the RPG whizzed by harmlessly. The Marines used tow missiles to destroy the tanks, while attack helicopters engaged Iraqi forces a short distance away. More on that in just a minute. About 24 hours after seizing the Iraqi port of Qasr and accepting the surrender of more than 400 Iraqi soldiers, coalition forces continue to encounter pockets of resistance. Securing this port is strategically important for bringing humanitarian aid into Iraq as soon as possible. 2 British helicopters collided, killing 6 crew members and 1 American. The accident happened in the Persian Gulf shortly after the 2 Royal Navy Sea King helicopters took off from a British carrier. It was the second deadly helicopter crash in as many days. The Army's 3rd Infantry Division, spearheaded by the 7th Cavalry, has halted its rapid advance towards Baghdad. The unit stopped when it detected a nearby Iraqi force. It is more than 100 miles into Iraqi territory. That is public information that we are allowed to broadcast to you. And Walter Rogers just reported a short time ago the 7th Cavalry should be on the move shortly. About 2 hours ago, Iraqi soldiers fired 3 mortars into Kurdish-controlled northern Iraq. CNN's Kevin Seitz reports the incident was the first action by Iraqi forces seen in the area. No casualties reported. And Operation Shock and Awe is now in its 17th hour. The Pentagon says up to 1,500 bombs and missiles are expected to fall on Iraq during the first 24 hours. Here is just a glimpse of the damage caused during the ferocious wave of explosions. You're taking a look at these images, some from Iraqi TV. Not sure what building that is, but you heard General Shepard detail some of the damage in Baghdad.
And you are looking at live pictures from Baghdad, where it is about 1 minute past 2 o'clock in the afternoon on this continuing day of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
And pictures can be so deceiving, can't they?
Everything seems so calm there, yet those pictures we have seen elsewhere throughout Iraq, in northern Iraq, and southeastern Iraq, both with the 7th Cavalry, also in Qasr, and also outside Basra. It is a far different story than what you are seeing right now in Baghdad.
Coalition forces are battling pockets of resistance in the port of Qasr at this hour. Qasr is Iraq's only outlet to the Persian Gulf.
And those pictures that we are showing you right now showing Cobra attack helicopters circling around the old port in Qasr, where the pockets of resistance were met. Marines searching building to building and also using Cobra attack helicopters to target them.
Yeah, let's pause a moment to say good morning to our audience. It's Saturday, March 22nd from CNN's global headquarters in Atlanta. I'm Carol Costello.
And good morning. I'm Anderson Cooper. Thanks for joining us or staying with us, whatever the case may be. We're going to take a fast-forward look at some war-related events expected to happen later today. Not giving anything away. This is just what keep an eye out for. President Bush will monitor the war from Camp David this weekend. The Maryland retreat fully equipped to keep the president informed and connected with all aspects of the military campaign. It is, after all, as his spokesman reminded reporters yesterday, a Marine facility. Anti-war protesters say they will stage a die-in, that's what they called it, at a home near Taos, New Mexico. The home belonged to, and does belong to, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, one of 6 homes he owns in northern New Mexico. And Sunday's Oscar ceremony is a go. Seems surreal, but it's true. It's a go for now, at least. But the Academy president says that could change if circumstances warrant.
And here's a short review of the ground gained by coalition forces. Let's go. The U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division, spearheaded by the 7th Cavalry, has penetrated more than 100 miles inside Iraqi territory. Again, that is public information given to us by the military. U.S. and British forces have secured the Fall Peninsula, Iraq's only outlet to the Persian Gulf, and its oil pumping terminal. And in western Iraq, coalition forces also captured 2 key airfields, including one suspected of being a possible site for weapons of mass destruction.
Right, and that's the H3H2 you're seeing on that graphic. Now let's head to Kuwait City, where Bill Hemmer is standing by. Bill, the latest.
Anderson, Carol, welcome to another day here in Kuwait. We can tell you our crew of 4, the last television network to report from Baghdad, expelled as of yesterday. Their last report came a little more than 24 hours ago. Because of that, we cannot get independent verification, but Reuters is now reporting that at least 4 different explosions have now been heard on the outskirts of Baghdad. That's the latest word within the past hour. That's in the central part of the country. In southeastern Iraq, it is another day there. In the old and new port of Qasr, and CNN's Christiane Amanpour now joins us live. She's with the Royal British Marines and can bring us up to date on as to whether or not there continues to be fighting there, be it in the new or the old port. Something to keep in mind here. We're trying to keep parallel tracks here as we try and follow the information and see indeed what's happening there. Christiane, your perspective from there is what now?
Bill, on a very windy and sandy day, we just come back from the new port of Qasr. The port itself, the new port, what's known as the main port there, the facility that they wanted to take intact, they have got. And it's the U.S. Marines, the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit, who went and took that port yesterday, and they're consolidating their support there. When we were there, we saw lots of U.S. Marines, and of course this is rather an unusual operation because it's commanded by the Brigadier General in charge of what's known as 3 Commando Brigade. Those are British forces. So that is a joint operation there. Now, on the about 3 kilometers away from where we were, up a little bit away from the new port, is what's called the old port, and that's where some grain, and there's got a grain silo and things like that. Now there was some pockets of resistance, and there we did see over my location there we saw 4 U.S. Cobra helicopters, and we know that they were up over the old port area, trying to keep the resistance down, and there was artillery in there as well, because they were meeting resistance from pockets of Iraqis who also had weapons and, in some cases, we were told, mortars. This is what the colonel in charge of that Marine force there told us about the resistance they were meeting.
I think so far it's gone quite well. I mean, we did meet some resistance, and for the most part, the plan that we had, we executed pretty much without any major changes. but it's probably not going as quick, perhaps, as we had thought.
So, as I say, they think that they have it broadly under control, but it's by no means completely secured yet because of those pockets of resistance. And what we were told was that there were all sorts of different individuals, different looking individuals in terms of what they were wearing. Some were wearing civilian clothes, some we were told were wearing military clothes, others then took off their military clothes. So all in all, there's a certain amount of confusion there on behalf of the American and British forces as to exactly who they're dealing with. They have, of course, also had surrenders. They've had, we are told by the U.S. Colonel, several hundred surrenders and several hundred prisoners of war now. And some of those we saw today. We can't get too close because of Geneva Convention rules, but we did see some of them being guarded by Marines in a big warehouse area at that port, and then they were being brought out. They were put on trucks, again guarded by U.S. Marines, and they were being taken to a central collection point where those POWs will then be under the charge of the British. So Qasr, a great deal of focus on it because we've been talking about it for a while, and because it's been the focus of operations for the last 24 hours and more, and they're still just trying to wrap up the last pockets of resistance. They told us they hope to have that done by today. We'll wait and see if that is possible. Back to you, Bill.
Christian, back on the Iraqi soldiers, the prisoners of war. Several hours ago, we had reported that several thousand Iraqi soldiers in that same area of southern Iraq had surrendered to U.S. and British forces there. There was one report that an entire division, perhaps as many as 8,000 Iraqi soldiers. Any way to verify that from where you are?
Not from where we are. We just saw those several hundred there today. But of course there is, you've had some of our journalists who are embedded talking about these sort of isolated incidents of surrender. Certainly we haven't heard yet ourselves about such large numbers of surrenders. So far they tend to be in the tens or in the low hundreds in terms of the area that we are monitoring, which is southern Iraq, where we were this morning. But we were told that the hundreds or so that we saw at Qasr, some of those had come from Baghdad, and we were told by people there that Baghdad had sent a unit there to try to defend the port, and some of those POWs were people from Baghdad who told the soldiers that that's where they had come from as they surrendered.
All right, another quick question about the area you're in right now. You mentioned these pockets of resistance. How much do you get a sense right now about a sense of freedom of movement on behalf of the U.S. and British forces at this time? How comfortable do they feel at this point?
Well, they're telling us that they feel fairly sure and confident that they have secured most of the southeastern part of Iraq. For instance, they've had several days of operation which have included the Al-Faw Peninsula. Again, there were pockets of resistance there, and there were also surrenders, but that is now totally secured by British forces. And then we've got Qasr, which we've been talking about, and then the Ramallah oil fields, which we're told also are secured. And then there's this issue of trying to pacify, neutralize, win the surrender or capitulation of the 51st Division of the Iraqi army in the Basra area. And we have heard that there have been some surrenders by some commanders. At first we were told it was the divisional commander, but then that's been rolled back, and we're told one of the brigade commanders has surrendered, and that British forces reported seeing other brigades, quote, in the process of thinking about capitulating. In other words, doing the kinds of things that the US and British have asked them to do if they intend not to fight and to surrender, certain vehicle formations and certain postures regarding how they are, in other words, putting down their weapons and things. But we still don't have, and we don't have the full details on that, and we won't for a while. But they feel they are fairly much in control of this part of the country.
Christian Amanpour reporting live there in southeastern Iraq, that port city that we've talked about yesterday, again today. It's key for military movement and certainly key for humanitarian aid that may, according to the British, may start flowing within 48 hours, something to watch, and we will from here. Meanwhile, back in Kuwait, northern part of this country, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, embedded yet again with the U.S. Marines. We talked to him last hour about some movement up the road toward the Iraqi border. Sanjay, how goes it now? Good afternoon.
Hey, Bill, good afternoon. Yeah, we're with a convoy of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, 1 MEF they call it. You've been talking so much with our other reporters about the forward-moving troops. This is a convoy basically designed to support and supply some of those forward-moving troops with all sorts of things. Bill, security is a concern here as well, as you've been talking so much about. Just behind me, over my right shoulder, a 50 caliber machine gun. That is a machine gun, one of many weapons designed to protect this particular convoy. Corporal Ramos is manning that particular machine gun. Bill, as I mentioned, the convoy is basically designed to supply, restock the forward-moving troops. Over my left shoulder, Bill, thousands of pallets of MREs. You're familiar with those, meals ready to eat. They're on those big trucks back there, moving those forward as well to provide some nourishment and some food for the forward-moving troops as well. Bill, also, I'm wearing a sort of funny-looking jacket here. This is called a MOP suit. It is essentially a NBC suit, nuclear, biological, chemical suit, designed to protect me as well as everyone else traveling with this convoy against any of those types of threats. There have been no confirmations of any of those sorts of threats. This is purely a precautionary suit at this time. Bill?
Dr. Sanjay Gupta again with the Marines. We'll check in a bit later in the day, Sanjay. Thanks. Good work. Back to the POW issue. CENTCOM, Central Command out of Qatar, informing us that yesterday, on Friday, they dropped 2 million more leaflets over southern Iraq, encouraging Iraqi soldiers to surrender, not to use weapons of mass destruction as well, and not to leave the oil wells intact. It is part of that effort, we are told, that has helped contribute to the amount of surrenders we have seen already, in some cases, literally holding the leaflets that have been dropped by the coalition forces in their hands when they turned themselves over. One other note, Anderson Carroll, I mentioned this last hour, just so our viewers know, we're about 3 hours away right now from seeing Tommy Franks, head of CENTCOM down in Qatar. It'll be the first time he will brief reporters down there since the military campaign got underway late on Wednesday night. We'll have it for you live again, 9 a.m. East Coast time, 5 o'clock here in Kuwait throughout the Persian Gulf. Back to you now at the CNN Center.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, Bill, thanks very much. All evening long, all morning long, I should be saying, we've been checking in with Walt Rogers, who's with the 7th Cavalry. 7th Cavalry, legendary unit, moving out the tip of the spear, they like to call themselves, moving ahead of the other forces, scouting out. Just got this little graphic we're just going to show you a little bit before you go to Walter. It's based out of Fort Stewart, Georgia. 7th Cavalry, part of the 3rd Infantry Division. Of course, famous for as being General Custer's outfit, but it's been a long time since then. And then the 3rd Infantry Division also had a legendary record in World War I, World War II, and the Korean conflict. And we have seen really in the last 2 days or so that 7th Cavalry just riding hard through the deserts of Iraq, heading toward the target, ultimately Baghdad. And as they will tell you, that is their ticket home. Get to Baghdad, that's the way station to getting home. Let's check in right now with Walt Rogers with the 7th Cavalry. Walter?
Anderson, the headline here in the southern Iraqi theater appears to be that the Iraqi units are certain of them are not just going to surrender. In fact, they're putting up some stiff resistance. It's largely a nuisance factor, but from where I am in south central Iraq to where my colleagues are shooting military action over around Basra in southeastern Iraq, each of us has encountered the same thing today, namely that the Iraqis, when they're determined, will stand and fight an overwhelming American military force, not be awed by it, not cut and run, but fight to the death, as that's what we experienced here with the 7th Cavalry. The 7th Cavalry was supposed to move north along this road behind me more than a few hours ago. What happened, however, was it was determined through reconnaissance that there was an Iraqi detachment up there of undetermined size. It was also not clear what the intent of the Iraqi detachment was. Under the most optimistic conditions, it was thought they might surrender. That was not at all the case. The Iraqi detachment began firing mortars on the Crazy Horse troop of the 7th Cavalry. Then it became very clear that this was a hostile unit. The rules of engagement were very clear. The commander of the 7th Cavalry called up his heavy artillery, the 155 millimeter Paladin guns. They began pounding away, firing 6 rounds, and then another 6 rounds at that Iraqi detachment several miles up the road behind me. The reason they used the Paladin guns, the heavy artillery, is because it's a standoff weapon. You don't risk your own soldiers' lives, your own tanks, your own Bradley fighting vehicles. Then the reconnaissance helicopters were sent out to determine if indeed the Iraqi unit which was up there had been put out of business. The helicopter helicopters were a bit surprised. As the Kiowas flew up there to determine what the artillery had accomplished, there were still some heavy machine guns among the Iraqis up there. The Iraqis began firing the heavy machine guns at the low-flying Kiowa helicopters. They also fired shoulder-fired missiles at the U.S. helicopters. That required nimble flying by the U.S. pilots. They had to duck, dodge, bob, and weave. No helicopter was shot down. In fact, there have been no American casualties, despite the rather intrepid resistance put forth by this small Iraqi unit up the road. Still, the Army wasn't convinced it was safe to go forward without risking its troops and its weapons, which of course will be much more important as this unit moves closer to Baghdad. So at that point, the Army called in an A-10 Warthog. That's an Air Force plane with a huge Gatling gun in it, and that flies very low over the battlefield, and with this Gatling gun just destroys anything in its path. And after that, it appears that what was left of that Iraqi detachment has been put out of existence, all of them killed. We're not sure the numbers of casualties, but at this point, it appears that the Iraqis are no longer a threat to the 7th Cavalry, no longer blocking the road. I say that as a matter of deduction because behind me, I think you can see the fuel tankers pumping fuel into these tanks, suggesting the tanks will be ready to go very quickly again. And again, it seems unlikely if there was any artillery threat from the Iraqis who had been there earlier, the tankers with their highly flammable fuel would not have been brought forward. But again, at this hour, the surprise factor and probably the headline of the day is the Iraqis have demonstrated they can't stop the United States and British forces, but they can be a nuisance factor, and they will stand and fight, in this case, to the death in some cases. Quite an interesting development here across the southern Iraqi front. Back to you.
Walter, that's very interesting. Also, sort of jives with what we are hearing from other parts of the country. You use that term nuisance factor. We in the southeast they are calling it sporadic resistance, and that's what we've been seeing in Qasr in areas around Basra so far as we know. So, Walter, just so we're absolutely clear, right now the status, as far as we know, that the Warthog has come in. That plane, which a lot of flyers will tell you is ugly but very efficient, quite deadly. That has come in, sprayed the area. So as far as you know, there is no more resistance up ahead. Theoretically, you will get moving at some point in the not too distant future.
To the best of my knowledge, that's the case. Now, of course, I haven't done my own recce up there, but those who have gone forward seem to be persuaded that once the Warthog moved through, it would have wiped out any residual elements that the artillery and the helicopters had not taken out. And again, the most telling thing of all is that fuel truck over there taking care of these tankers. If there was any danger, I doubt very much they would have brought the fuel trucks up to refuel the tanks at this point. And my assumption is, as a matter of fact, I was told the Army does plan to push forward. The 3rd Squadron, U.S. Army 7th Cavalry, will soon begin pushing down this road. They have an objective to reach this evening, and they will move toward that objective once they're totally convinced that Iraqi detachment up the road. Again, we don't know how many soldiers there were, but they were very game and put up a rather courageous little fight, given what they were facing from the 7th Cavalry.
Walter, this is Carol Costello. I just had a question. You know, those troops that you're with, the Army, soldiers, they haven't slept in 60 hours, more than 60 hours now. It rained overnight, and it's quite muddy out there now. What's the mood?
It's a good question, but I think it can be answered in a single word: determined. Every soldier here knows there's a mission to be accomplished. They know that mission doesn't end until they get to Baghdad. They're merely waiting the command to proceed forward. I think every one of them is more than eager to do that. If for no other reason, it means we no longer have to stand here in the mud, as we have been doing for, I guess, 4 or 5 hours now. The mud is pretty gruesome, if you will. There was one soldier who quipped to me today an old Army saying, which goes, "If it rains, the Army trains." That is to say, mud is associated with the Army wherever it goes, and it seems to be a vital ingredient of almost every war I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, Walter, you told me before that soldiers and yourself literally encrusted with dirt. I know that dust was a factor yesterday and in the days before, but now it's muddy. Does that help, hurt, make no difference?
don't think it makes a difference. It might slow you a little, but the Army's not going to bog down. Each of these vehicles is equipped for this kind of warfare. It's not really going to make a serious difference at all. It's a comfort, it's a discomfort factor, and I think that's all you can say of the mud. It's just difficult to get rid of it. You track it into your vehicles, and you have to live with it, and it grinds further into your clothes. But I would not say it's a factor in the equation of the battlefield. Carol?
Walter Rogers reporting live somewhere from within Iraq, southern Iraq, about
right.
100 miles into that country now.
That's right. Now, if you are just joining us, or if you have just joined us recently, Martin Savage has been with the and is still with the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. Has had some extraordinary access in the last couple of hours. Came under fire from a rocket-propelled grenade. We're going to show you what happened next after this break.
The strike on Iraq continues. The latest from the war zone, plus a Desert Storm tank commander. Only on Larry King Weekend. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
I like to read. My daddy likes to read to me, except when the game's on. Me and Mommy read before bedtime, but sometimes I fall asleep before the end. One time I'm gonna read all the books in the whole world.
Watch QVC for Weekly Reader's all-time favorites book collection. It's 11 classic children's books featuring award-winning stories. Get a special one-day price on this one-of-a-kind collection Wednesday, April 2nd throughout the day, only on QVC.
And they're off. Looking for heart-pounding racing action? The new Raynham Park has it all. Thoroughbred racing, harness racing, greyhound racing. Every day, thrill to the fastest horses and the sleekest dogs. Racing for top purses at America's premier tracks. Cash in on a daily double of non-stop excitement and great food. Plus live music on the weekends. Your best bet for racing action is the new Raynham Park. So what are you waiting for? Come out and play.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
We here at CNN will tell you no one gets you closer. That has certainly been true in the last several hours. Martin Savage, traveling with the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, came under fire. Rocket-propelled grenade, RPG. It missed, thankfully, but what happened next was riveting, to say the least. Let's take a look at this package Martin has just filed.
This is a CAT team, they refer to it. It's basically heavily armed with your Mark 19 automatic grenade launchers and your TOW missiles, which you now see at the front and back of us. And these are very highly mobile. They can run and gun, and they pick off armor, and that's the way they work. There'll be other people that are out there spotting and say, hey, we may see a tank moving, we may see this, or we may see that. And you quickly call in a TOW. They peek around the corner, launch, and then get out of the way again. So it's actually a very mobile, very effective means of fighting, unlike a tank, which can be slow to go. Take a look back here one more time. This tank continues to cook off. You should see the shells inside of these things. They are quite massive. But again, the inside of the tank does not look well used, so it doesn't appear that somebody's been using these very recently.
So
Martin, I'm sorry. I was just wondering about the town again and how many people were still there and if you could see anyone.
Well, we saw them as we initially came in. Of course, once the firing and the explosions occurred, the people have good sense to sort of melt away, to either get inside their homes or stay out of the line of fire, because they realize, of course, that the Marines are going to be rather nervous with the situation around them. So it's always